is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
For the College of Complexes, this is our 242nd meeting since we started in February of 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require our speakers take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something, they don't care what it is. We give our speaker up to an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter we only listen to one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. Then we have question and answers, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience gets 5 minutes at this podium to respond to the speaker said for or against. And our speaker gets the last word, gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we put on our speaker, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. I think Judy has an announcement. Come on up here.
I just want you all to make sure that everybody has the opportunity.
Come on up here, Judy.
Sign this pledge. That I don't need to do that. Oh, you want me to be on camera? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I forgot. You gotta get on there for Doc. Okay. I just wanted you to have this opportunity because I have spoken to you from the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans before, and obviously we've said our retirement benefits are under attack. So this is a pledge to vote for candidates for Congress who will fight to strengthen and expand our retirement security instead of voting to cut them, like cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Obviously, we can have those cut, but we don't even have them expanded here in Texas. And I appreciated Tom allowing me to drop by because the College of Complexes is one of our affiliates of Texas Alliance for Retired Americans, and our national just asked us to get signatures of those members who were willing to do that. So I just want to make sure that I think this gentleman may not have had a chance to sign this if he wants to do that, and thank you all very much.
Any other announcements? No, that's it? Okay. Well, next week we have Linda Sproul. She's going to talk about building a bigger house. It's a bigger house of U.S. House of Representatives. So that'll be an interesting thing. She'll be here. The following week is Ray Creeley. He's sitting over here. He's going to talk about how do strategies of political progressives left compared to our nation's founders. That should be interesting. He'll be here on September 27th. On October 4th, the importance of being stupid, if that is you truly want to be happy. That's Dexter Elkins, college professor, is going to talk about that. And on October 11th, populism, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's Jim Love. He's going to talk about that. So we have quite an itinerary lined up. And that's coming up. It's on your itinerary that I handed out to you. Our speaker tonight is Norma Warner. She's a retired federal investigator who worked in the Social Security Administration for 14 years. She's going to speak in favor of Social Security and its prospects for long-term funding. Some people don't support Social Security because they feel it's a socialist program. Many people detest the program until they need it. What has it done for you? Even those who support the program for it will run out of money. Do we need Social Security and Medicare? Norma argues that we do, and it will be around for one form or another so long as the U.S. is around. So the topic is, will Social Security be around in 50 years? And without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Norma Warner.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
Thank you.
These where you want them.
Well, I'm sure most of us here have already experienced Social Security personally. So You know, I worked for Social Security almost 15 years, and I worked all of the programs because there are several trust funds. There's a trust fund for retirement, one for survivor benefits, one for disability benefits, and of course one for Medicare. I worked with all of the funds. My husband, Charles, retired from Social Security. He has over 40 years of experience in the disability program. And so it's funny because when our friends call us, they call me because they know that I have a wider knowledge. Unless you're disabled, then you wish to speak to him. And we have helped many people get their Social Security benefits. So from the outset, you know my point of view. I think Social Security will be here for as long as you and I are alive, and as long as the United States is alive, I think. And you'll see why after my presentation. And do we need it? Oh my God, the question doesn't even, why ask it? We know we need it. Even though there are people who would love to see it die in the vine, but it's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. So many of my friends, especially my Republican friends, tell me that they don't think we need Social Security. They've been telling me that for a long time, since 1973 when I started working for them, for Social Security. And it's funny, as we have aged, each of them has become eligible. And once they become eligible, oh my gosh, they love AARP, they love Social Security, and of course they love Medicare. So the reason that so many people don't agree with Social Security is because they feel that it's a socialist system that takes from Peter to pay Paul. I think that kind of thinking seems to say that there's a suspicion that maybe Peter won't get anything because it's all been given to Paul. But the truth is that as long as, and of course it is a young program. I mean, you know, it was passed in 1935. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. So it is a young program, but it's still funded, at least for the foreseeable future. And I believe that it will continue to be funded. So yeah, it's true. It is a program that takes the earnings of current workers, taxes them, and those workers then support the retirees. You know, when the program was first passed in 1935, Congress only foresaw protecting the worker. The 1935 Act only said that workers who were 65 years of age or older would be able to receive Social Security benefits. That was it. Of course, they needed time to start building up a base, issue Social Security numbers, start collecting the taxes, and lo and behold, the first year they paid taxes was 1940. And by the end of 1940, they had so much money in the trust fund, they decided, well, why don't we increase who gets benefits and let's add benefits. And so they added benefits not just for the worker, but also for the worker's spouse, for the worker's children who were under age 18, and there must have been congressmen who had elderly parents, because they also included a benefit for a parent who is at least age 62 who is supported by the worker. And so that benefit has been around since the statute was first amended to include benefits. So the first year that benefits were paid was 1940. When it first started, there were over 20 workers supporting one retiree. Today, it takes 30 workers support 100. Think about that. So in the beginning, over 20 supported one. Today, 30 support 100. So it is a pay-as-you-go system. The trust funds are managed by the Secretary of the Treasury, and he has very specific instructions on how that money can be invested. The only thing the money's invested in is government securities. And it's interesting, the system that they have, because, it's like a bond. Okay, you buy the bond and it matures in 50 years. With Social Security trust fund money, if Social Security needs the money today, and they're still short 15 years before it matures, that security can be redeemed by Social Security at the face value for which it was acquired. So the guarantee is that the fund never loses money. That's why it's set up that way. So, do we need Social Security? Well, to give you an answer to that, I'm going to take a long time, but I think you all instinctively know the answer. So, as I said, 1935 the statute was passed. 1939 Congress added wives, children, and dependent parents. The average benefit in 1940 was $20 a month. $20 a month. In December of 1940, there were 200,000 beneficiaries. Today, there are over, beneficiaries, 58 million. So, does that tell you anything? Things have changed. And Congress felt so good about what they were doing, and the money kept coming in. So they kept amending the statute. In 1956, Congress amended the statute to give benefits to workers who were disabled and to their dependent children who were under the age of 18. They also added benefits for disabled children who were living with their parents and became disabled before the age of 18, and they were in fact dependent on that worker. So that was 56. In 1961, they thought, well, maybe 65 is too old. Maybe we should let people retire at 62, and we'll just reduce the benefit by 20%. And that was still a good deal. The benefit was wonderful. Back then, I can tell you that it was returning on average 50% of what they paid in. Today, Social Security estimates that people receive back 40% of their whatever their average earned income was. Social Security gives them back about 40%, which is still a pretty good investment. You can't, I don't know that we have any 401ks that guarantee us 40% of what we put in. So, in 1965, they made the biggest change ever. That's the year we got Medicare. I remember when it first became effective, I was still in high school, but the Social Security office was close to my house. They had lines all the way around the building, people trying to sign up for Medicare. So Medicare and Social Security go hand in hand. In 1997, Congress changed the Medicare program, and anymore I'm treating it separately because Medicare and Social Security kind of divorced. Congress set up two different funds for them. They're managed by separate entities, Social Security now being an independent agency, Medicare being governed by the USDA. And so, Medicare, just a little on Medicare, a big change for Medicare was 97 when they provided people on Medicare the opportunity to join the Advantage programs. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are in an Advantage program versus the original Medicare, which was strictly, Part A is your hospital. You don't pay for that, except when you go to the hospital, you have your deductibles. Part B is your doctor protection. And the original doctor protection, it's nationwide, which is what I like about it. I know Charlie, that's what we have him in. We don't have the Advantage programs. So what the Advantage programs, any of you in an Advantage program?
I was until about 2 weeks ago. I did it for 1 year, and 3 of my doctors that were on the program to begin with were not on it. I'm a retired teacher, so just on the 1st of September went back to the regular.
To the original. Yes. Yes.
At the highest level of the, PRS care.
Right.
But yeah, it was sold as a really good thing.
Well,
And I'm sure some of the benefits are really good.
Yes.
And it costs $15 a month less. But if 3 doctors that I've had for 10 or more years are not on it,
Yeah.
it doesn't help. So.
and that's the problem, of course. But the truth is that the Advantage programs have cost the Medicare fund a lot of money, and they're actually considering getting rid of the Advantage programs. Yeah, the Advantage programs, the advantage to them, of course, is that they typically will provide some benefits that are not provided by Medicare. They'll pick you up at your house, they'll provide you transportation to the doctor's office, things like that. Also, of course, with Medicare, President Bush added the prescription benefit, which is totally not funded. It is not funded by the Medicare tax. It is supposedly self-paying. And of course, they're already beginning to see that it's not really paying for itself. But the thing about that program, if it doesn't pay for itself, they will immediately increase the premiums for that program. Medicare has over 46 million beneficiaries. It became its own, it became separated from Social Security in '97. And as I said, I said USDA, I'm sorry, Health and Human Services. Yeah, you're right, it's Health and Human Services. I don't know what I was thinking about. Okay, in 1972, Congress, again feeling the largesse, decided that, well, they would give people increases based on the cost of consumer price index, but they would only do it ever so often. And then they decided, well, we've got enough money, let's stop fooling with this and let's give it automatically. The increase, if the consumer price index goes up by a certain amount, that's the percent of raise that people will get. And so that was in '72. They also provided incentives for people who wanted to work beyond age 65 and not collect benefits, the delayed retirement credits. If you worked until 70 and did not retire until 70, then you got 5 years of delayed retirement credits, which really added handsomely to the benefit. People always ask me, well, Norma, when should I retire? Well, I can tell you, I retired at 62. People give a lot of, well, you should wait until 65, until 70, now the benefit is taxed, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the deal. Are you sure you're going to be alive at 70? That's a big question, okay? I'm not sure I'm going to be alive at 70. So I'm going to take my chances right now and put it in my pocket, in my bank. If I don't need it, I'll save it and let it earn interest. But that's what I did anyway. Each of us has to think about those things, and when you assess your longevity, whether you want to take it at 62, wait until you're 65, and of course right now they're phasing in the 67 retirement age. Let's see, they also added, for the first time in 1972, they again added another benefit. Anybody care to guess who became covered in '72? You don't have grandchildren. Grandchildren, dependent grandchildren, who were either adopted by the grandparents or those grandchildren had no parents or disabled parents. And that benefit is still around. So they also, the disabled children who became disabled before age 18, they increased the age to age 22 in 1972. So there again, they're still adding. In 1972, Congress decided that they were not happy with the way that the states were administering. Remember the aid to the aged, the blind, and the disabled? It was administered by the states. And so Congress decided that they were not happy with the way it was being run. And so they amended the Social Security Act to give the Supplemental Security Income Program, we call it SSI, to Social Security. And that's when I was hired, because they anticipated doubling the rolls, which in essence they did. And so 72, there's still expansiveness, still adding. But then all of a sudden they realize that they don't have enough money for all of these people that they've decided they're going to give benefits to. And so then begins the period where they start taking away. And let me just mention, I want to make the distinction between Social Security benefits and supplemental security income benefits. Social Security benefits were earned by people. They worked, they paid the Social Security tax, and so it is an earned right. Yes, and yes, the employee paid half and the employer paid the other half of the tax. But it is an earned benefit, where supplemental security income comes from the general funds. It is totally and completely based on need. It is a welfare program. Okay, even though obviously we've tried to get away from the word welfare. So in January of 1974, Social Security took over the supplemental security income program. So Social Security, well, I've already covered that. You know, we asked the question, do we really need the programs? In Texas, the percentage of people that live in poverty is 10.7%. If Texas people did not have Social Security, now we're not talking supplemental security income, this is the earned right, Social Security. If we didn't have Social Security benefits, our poverty rate would be 41.4%. So, I mean, to me, the answer is very clear. I just don't see any other answer. We need Social Security. So in 1977, the actuaries woke up and said, oh my gosh, we have overspent, we're going to go bankrupt, and we got to do something. So it was at that point, for the first time in a long time, they raised the FICA tax, the federal income compensation. It's to 7.65. Now figure it out. That was 1977 when that happened, and it hasn't gone up since 1977. It has been 7.65 since 1977. They still only tax covered earnings. In other words, like this year, I believe it's $117,000. So if you make more than $117,000, then any amount after that is not, you're not going to pay a FICA tax. You're still going to pay income tax, but you're not going to pay a Social Security tax. Now, you will pay a Medicare tax. Okay, Medicare, we have to pay the tax on all earned income. And I want to make the distinction between earned income versus, for example, investment income. Social Security and how they compute your earnings is entirely based on earned income. In other words, you worked for somebody. They took out the Social Security tax, or you were self-employed and you got to pay all the tax, all 15-point-something% of the tax. Because if you didn't pay taxes into the system, then obviously you're not going to get benefits. Teachers, state workers, there are obviously other pension systems. And so if they have earnings from another pension system, then they're not eligible for Social Security unless they worked and earned 40 quarters. That is 10 years of work, because there are 4 quarters in 1 year. Okay? Okay, so Congress at this point in 77 decided, okay, well, we've been increasing the amount of earnings that are taxed ever so often. From here on out, since we're giving them a pay raise based on the CPI, then let's increase the taxed earnings also based on the Consumer Price Index. And so every year it goes up based on the Consumer Price Index. The amount of earnings that are taxed, that is. Now, I already spoke to someone who was upset about, well, actually you were talking about the windfall elimination provision. In 1977, they passed the government pension offset. The government, are any of you affected by the government pension offset? Teachers, for example? Okay, so teachers, what this means is, let's say that, and I'm just using ballpark figures, okay? Let's say that a teacher on her own right is going to earn a pension of $900 a month. I'm lowballing it, okay? Some of you might say, oh no, that's a good amount. Okay, so teacher, $900 a month. But let's say that as the wife of a wage earner who worked and paid in, remember the wives are supposed to be covered? A wife is entitled to 1/2 of what the husband, the covered employee, is getting. And it's the same for husbands, by the way, that husbands do get benefits if they were dependent on their wives. So the formula is the same for husbands or wives at any rate. So in my example, teacher, $900. As a spouse of a husband or wife who earned and paid Social Security, let's say that that wage earner retires at full retirement age and is making $1,800 a month. Well, half of that is what the wife would be entitled to, assuming she's also full retirement age. So she's got $900 as a wife, $900 as a teacher. The government pension offset says, well, you'll still be entitled, however, we are going to offset your Social Security benefit by 2/3. So, since she's getting $900 Social Security, 2/3 of her pension is $900. So 900 times 2/3 is 600. So you're going to subtract 600 from her. No, well, they don't affect your teacher pension. They're going to affect your Social Security. So they will only draw $300 a month. Now, a lot of my friends, oh, they're so mad at me, and they have arguments with me. I mean, one of my very best friends, she cannot draw her husband's Social Security because her pension is more than his Social Security. So, I mean, there's no, 1/2 of his doesn't even begin to cover 2/3 of, you know, so it's gone. She gets nothing. Now, she can still get Medicare under him, and she does, and that's a good thing. Of course, she has to pay for it. Okay, so, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Oh, yes. Yeah. They do. They've had to do that with Medicare to support the program. Yes. And so they passed the government pension offset. Let me see. In 1980, the actuaries felt that the disability fund was going to go bankrupt. And so once again, they took away. And I know we hate it when they take away. Trust me, I'm no different. I hate it when they take away. People who were disabled used to receive a benefit equal to a person who retired at age 65. So that spouse that I told you, eligible to $1,800 a month, if they became disabled at, let's say, 50, they would draw $1,800 because the assumption was he can't work anymore, so it's frozen from this point forward, so he's going to draw as if he were 65. Well, Congress said, you know what, it's not sustainable, and it's not fair, it's not right. And so they changed it to where the full retirement, the full disability benefit for someone who gets disability benefits is reduced by 15%. And so the whole family is then affected by, the 15% reduction. In 1981, Congress reduced the age of entitlement to student benefits from 22 to 19. And boy, that one, let me tell you, having worked for Social Security, I can tell you this about that benefit. It was the single most labor-intensive benefit to administer. And the reason for that, students, they enroll, And a week later, they drop courses, and they're no longer full-time. And they had to be full-time students. And so then, if they didn't let us know, then they owe us money, then we have to collect the money. Oh, and they changed addresses, it seemed to me, every month. I mean, it was labor intensive. And so in essence, what happened in 1981 is college students no longer paid. The child benefit was reduced. They're only paid child benefits until age 16. They're paid student benefits between 16 and 19. They will finish paying you through the semester in which you turn 19. And so it was a big reduction. So it also wound up reducing a mother's benefit. You know, mothers, when a spouse passes away, a mother is able to receive benefits for herself and her children. Minor children 16 years of age or younger. Back then it was 18, you know, at least in 1981 is when they changed it. So now the mother only gets benefits until her last child turns 18. So after that, she'll be eligible for widow's benefits at age 60. She can get disability benefits at age 50 as a disabled widow or widower. But the same thing is going to go for the formulas, okay, reduction in the formulas. And so student benefits, basically college benefits, no longer paid, okay. All right, the situation was still dire. In 1983, they took more stuff away. They increased the retirement age, the full maximum retirement age, instead of 65 to 67. Now, most of you have already been phased in. I can tell you, I'm born in 51, so I was phased in at 66. My brother, who was born in 1960, he'll have to be 67. So for all those that are born 1960 and later, it's 67 years of age. So there, and you know, some of that, in all fairness, we are living longer. If you stop and think about it, we are living longer, healthier lives. I mean, when Social Security first started, the life expectancy was like 50, no more than 60. Think about it, 1935, not good health care. The life expectancy was simply not there. And now we are beating all those life expectancy predictions. So we can live very healthy lives into our 80s and 90s. And I have a friend who's 103. I mean, incredible. And she's still healthy as can be. They also, federal employees, you know, Charles and I retired as federal employees. For federal employees, any federal employee hired after January 1984, that's the magic date. Anyone hired 184 and onward, they have to pay Social Security on their pension. So it totally changed the retirement system. So that added a lot of people paying taxes. A lot of people. It solved the immediate insolvency problem. Also, I tell you, there was real anger and animus toward federal employees during those years, because another thing they did is anybody who is entitled to a pension that they earned on their own, but it was you weren't paying into Social Security, like federal employees, we weren't paying before January of '84. They call it the windfall elimination provision. And that's the one that this young lady was upset about, because it affects her. It affects me. So windfall elimination, just to try and give you a brief explanation of that. The formula is based on an average index of earnings over 35 years. Now that's in general, okay? There's exceptions, people who die young, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, retirement benefits, they're going to compute and include your 35 years of earnings. If you had 0 years, keep working. You can increase your Social Security substantially. At any rate, the formula was designed on purpose with what we call bend points. People who are poor, who have very little earnings, 10,000 a year, 8,000 a year. The formula was specifically designed so that those people got a higher return than somebody making 117,000 a year. It's just designed that way. So what happens when somebody like me works for the federal government and works enough to earn a pension under the federal government? I also worked on my own. I was self-employed. I had other earnings before I came to the federal sector. And so I had my 10 years of coverage. Remember, that's all you have to have? 10 years. So I was eligible for a benefit, but when they would average all of my earnings, they were very low. And so in essence, they would have wound up paying me what they pay poor people, even though I wouldn't say I was poor. So Congress decided, you know what? Those people are collecting a windfall, because that's not what that formula was meant to do. It was meant to help people with low earnings. And so, effective with 1983, if you have a pension where you didn't pay Social Security tax and you have Social Security, then they're going to change the bend point. And you're not going to get the break that low wage earners get. And so in essence, I mean, like for me, it was a doozy. I mean, I retired at 60, almost 63, so my reduction by itself anyway was about 25%. And then windfall elimination was another 25%. So I mean, it was quite a significant reduction. But, you know, I understand why they're doing that. I believe in what they're doing. I do think that there are people that all they're ever going to do is, you know, they're going to have a job that pays minimum wage. They don't have much education. Perhaps they're disabled and they don't, you know, they're not able to do a job that pays more. And so that is the way that our society has chosen to help them. And so I know she was adamant, she's hoping Congress will change the law. And I know you all get AARP, and we read AARP, and of course they support the law. They're trying to get a law passed to do away with the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. Folks, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. It's a just solution. It really is. It is a just solution. And so I don't begrudge Social Security for dinging me an additional 25%. Also, in 1983, Congress decided that Social Security benefits should be taxed. Yep. And of course, Medicare benefits, depending on how much money you make, they started charging a fee for Medicare based on how much money people had. So in 1990, Congress actually extended coverage to state and local employees, people who work for cities and they have city pensions and things like that. But only if those cities and those states did not have pension plans. So for example, people in Texas were not affected because we have the Texas Teacher Retirement System. In 1993, Congress again ran short of money with the Medicare fund, and so they decided to tax all earnings. That's the year that happened. And so if somebody earns $1 million, they're going to pay taxes on $1 million. Medicare taxes, okay? They're still only going to pay Social Security taxes on $117,000. Okay, in '94, Congress decided to make Social Security an independent agency. By the way, Social Security as an agency, having worked for it, I'm quite proud of the service I provide, my service for them. They have an administrative cost that is less than 5% of their budget. The Red Cross can't say that. There are no nonprofits out there who can say that they run themselves on less than 5% of their intake. So it is a well-managed organization. In the spirit of taking benefits away, again in 1996, we were actually paying benefits to drug addicts and alcoholics. Of course, they had to go through rehab. They had to, do the steps so that they didn't drink anymore. They had to show evidence that they were, in fact, taking care of getting well. But effective 1996, Congress said, we don't care if they're an alcoholic or if they're a drug addict. They're not getting benefits.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, if
I started drinking, I would no longer get Social Security?
not if you, so here's the distinction I'm making. That's for disability benefits. Okay, so if I apply for disability and say I'm disabled because I'm an alcoholic, I have no control over my urges, blah, blah, blah. Quite frankly, we paid you benefits until 1996. Okay, and the same thing, I'm a heroin addict, I can't control myself. Okay, fine, we'll put you on benefits. Not anymore. Congress has said, and I think the people have clearly said, no, we're not going to do that. That might be enabling. I don't know. So as you can see from this brief history, there would be many, many people affected if we didn't have Social Security. I didn't mention it in my discussion here, but divorced wives, for example, used to be you had to be married for 20 years before you could get a spousal benefit. Congress was really, they really went out of their way not to inconvenience families because they paid a benefit to a wife who was divorced from her husband. He remarries, has children. Her benefit is paid what we call outside of the family maximum. In other words, if a wage earner is making $1,800 a month, his family maximum typically is 2.5 times that, so that his wife and children share in the rest of it, okay? Well, if a divorced wife is entitled to benefits, then she's going to affect the family and the children. So Congress said, we'll pay the benefit outside of that maximum so that it does not affect the family. And they did change the law so that the wife only has to be married 10 years. It's no longer required to be married 20. And if the man dies, if the spouse dies, because again, the law has been changed so that if a man was being supported by a wife, then the man is entitled to 1/2 of his wife's benefit. What determines who is entitled is simply who gets the higher benefit. Okay? So, anyway, those are just some of the changes that they've made. So you can see, if we were to get rid of Social Security, all those people would be going into poverty. My children's father died in 1987, left behind 2 children, and it was just such a relief to know that Social Security was going to be there to help my children until they became 19, graduated from high school, and that Charles and I didn't have to bear the burden alone because their father had died. So, my mother is a widow. She gets what my father, when the wage earner passes away, the widow will get 100% of what the husband was getting. And so my mother's getting what dad was getting, which frankly, $800 a month. So this was a person, the last year that he worked in 1989, he made $11,000. That tells you he was a low wage earner. Okay, so my mother couldn't live without the Social Security. Okay, and people who complain about the supplemental security income, they're getting so much money, they're bankrupting us. Well, come on, an individual gets $721 a month, that's a maximum benefit. The average really that people get, because you have to subtract for earnings of other kind, is $428. That's not much. You can't live on $428. I know you can't. Maybe for a week, I might be able to live on $428, but not for a month. So the programs are needed. Will the program be around in 50 years? That is a good question. And as you saw, when Congress thought they had too much money, they added. They haven't added anybody, you'll notice, since, what was that, 1977? Now they take away. So Congress will do what it takes to make sure that Social Security is still around. And I will tell you, they're considering things. And if you've read any of AARP's articles, they listed the same thing really that Congress is considering. They're considering raising the FICA, the tax amount, which hasn't been raised since 1977. They're thinking that they need at minimum 1% from the employee and 1% from the employer. That's what's on the table now. Who knows what it'll change. They're also, of course, considering raising the retirement age to 70. And the lowest because right now, even though it's 67, you can still retire at 62 with a substantial reduction. They're going to close that door and make 65 the minimum retirement age and 70 the maximum retirement age. They're also, let's see, they're also recommending, AARP for example is recommending that the Social Security funds should be able to invest in securities that are considered safe in the private sector. I don't much go for that one because it's too dependent on the market. I'd rather make sure that it's for sure there. I think the quickest way really to stem some of the red flow is to pay taxes on all earnings, not just that 117,000. You know, we should pay Social Security like we do on Medicare already. Pay FICA tax on all earned income. Okay, not investment income, earned income. So those are just a few of the things that they're thinking about right now. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Oh, okay.
No, she gets to stay there. It is.
Oh, I've already eaten. I'm good. Yeah.
Who wants to be first? There you go.
I guess this was the offset you talked about, where folks who had other pensions had it subtracted. Who was covered by that, and military was not? Is that right?
The military is covered by the windfall elimination provision because they were double and triple dippers, the military was, and they were affected by the change where they, if they had paid into a system where they didn't pay Social Security. The thing about military, though, is that they have paid into Social Security since 1956, I think it is. And so they are more affected by the government pension offset, for example, if they have, because they have a benefit, if they have a benefit that they earned where they didn't pay taxes. And a lot of them did because they would finish their military careers at 20 and then they go work for the federal service. Yeah, so they were double dipping. And anymore, that has been eliminated. They don't, the windfall elimination will apply to them. So I want to make sure that you understand the distinction between government pension offset and windfall elimination. So government pension offset applies to the dependents of Social Security retirees who have a pension on their own for which they did not pay Social Security, like teachers, like city workers, state workers. They would normally be entitled to 1/2 of their spouse's Social Security benefit. So Congress said, you can still draw a spousal Social Security benefit, but we are going to offset that Social Security benefit by 2/3 of your benefit that you earned for which you did not pay Social Security. That is government pension offset. Where windfall elimination has more to do with the formula which is beneficial for those with low earnings, because they were doing another job for which they were getting high earnings, but they were not paying Social Security in their own job. So it's my own earnings, my own pensions, when I'm entitled to a federal retirement pension and a Social Security check. Then they're going to use the adverse formula.
When should we expect the early retirement to move from 62 to 65?
Well, obviously, Congress hasn't even passed it yet. Those are just some of the things that are under consideration. And so typically when Congress makes a change like this, they're not going to make it overnight. I mean, like the change to 67 retirement age, they've been putting that in slowly. We're at 66 now. It's going to go to 66 in months until, for those born in 1960 and later, it's 67 for them.
Franklin Roosevelt created the Social Security program, did he not?
Well, he was president when it was passed.
Was benefits for children whose parents died a part of the original plan?
No. Remember, the original plan passed in 1935 only had benefits for the worker.
Okay, when
No.
did the benefits for orphan children kick in?
Before it became effective, it was amended in 1939 because they started paying benefits in 1940.
Okay, if children are orphaned, they're not going to know anything about Social Security program, and they're probably not even going to apply unless some adult, goes over there and takes them to the office and makes application for them. And you get reimbursement for that money that they lost?
That's a good question. There used to be a time when Social Security would pay retroactively all the benefits you were due. But again, as a cost-saving measure, they changed that. So if you apply today for retirement, for example, you can go back to January, but that's it. Even though I was eligible January of the year before, I can't go back that far. I can only go back within the year in which I retire. And
so they don't have statute of limitations, like 2 years or 10 years or whatever?
They do. They have a statute of limitations, and they will not pay back pay. But Social Security, again, I'm very proud of having worked for them. They do wonderful outreach programs. And for example, Texas, 8 to family, no. All the children programs, the state programs, CHIP, the programs for families with AFDC, well, it's not AFDC anymore, but you know what I mean, 8 to families with children. All of those state programs work very closely with Social Security. So if a child is left orphaned, they typically will wind up with state agencies or private homes for children. And I can promise you that all of those places have social workers that are very well versed in entitlement programs, and they see to it that they apply. I mean, it's like when somebody passes away, it's funny, we still have something called a lump sum death payment. It's a crummy little amount. It's $255. It's almost not even worth applying for. So sometimes people die and nobody knows about it. They don't know to go apply. No problem. The funeral home will send Social Security a form saying, hey, this person died, here's his Social Security number, and if they have a spouse or children, they will be contacted to apply for the lump sum. Yeah. So they do a good job of reaching people. They've got a website. Of course, I realize not everybody's computer literate, but their website has a wealth of information. And I promise you, they do an outstanding job of working with orphanages, with state agencies, with state and local programs, city programs, and making sure that they know what the rights are of people to draw survivor benefits, disability benefits, etc. And they send them to Social Security. So, I mean, I think they do a good job. I'm not aware of anyone that I've met recently that said, oh, I didn't know I could get benefits. That they almost immediately know. Yeah, today with the internet in particular. But I hear what you're saying in years past. But years past, they used to get back pay as long as it was due. Yeah.
Yes, hello. Has the fact that the interest rate on government bonds has been super low since 2008, has that been taken into account? Because that must reduce the future income.
And it does. You know, I read a lot of articles on the funding and the worries. The fund, because of the way it's designed, is very susceptible to this type of situation. On the other hand, though, because inflation has been so low, they haven't been as impacted as they might. For example, when we had those high interest rates, oh my gosh, the benefit kept going up and up. It was almost not sustainable. But nowadays, even though the money is not earning as much because the interest rate is so high, so low, the benefits that are being paid out, right now they're being able to pay them because, you've only gotten one COLA in the last, 4 or 5 years?
1.3.
Yeah, it was 1.3, and that's because President Obama made an exception. They're not supposed to give you COLAs unless the consumer price index goes up, I believe it's 3% or more. So he made an exception and provided a cost of living increase. So I believe that the fund will still be there. Congress will do what it takes. Yeah.
$50 million.
What is the interest that the money earns currently? What's it based on?
Well, as I said, they're government securities, and so, well,
2% there, ain't it?
no, 2% is high. They're running like 1 point something.
Yeah, it's actually what the market
What the market will bear. Yeah,
Which market for
there's a
what?
sale every Monday. There's a sale.
for government securities.
I know that. Is it the 10-year security or?
This article didn't get into the intricacies of which particular, it just said they invest in government securities with always the provision that if Social Security invests 50 million, that if it's for, let's say, 50 years at 1%, but they need it today, they can cash in that government security at the face value that they loaned the federal government so that they don't lose money. Because usually there's a penalty, right? If you and I invest and we take it out early, we're going to pay a penalty, so we're going to lose. So obviously Social Security is not paying penalties, and it has the right to call the money when they need it.
This is for my son. He's in Thailand, and he's been over there about 10 years working for their government, actually. Mm-hmm. Can he put money into Social Security and get his...
No. Now, people who work overseas can pay into Social Security, but only if they work for an American company that is at least 50% owned by Americans. And so they pay for their employees. They pay the Social Security tax.
Oh.
But he's working for the government of Thailand. There is no way. Yeah.
Also, can your disability go up if you go down to Social Security and say, does it ever go up, or do they just freeze it right there?
People drawing disability benefits get the same cost of living increase that retirees do. Everybody gets the same across the board. If the consumer price index was up 3%, you're getting a 3% increase. Everybody is.
Okay, so if you get a couple $100 a month on disability, and then
I don't know of anybody who gets 200. Typically the minimum is at least 500.
wow.
Even low-wage earners, it's more than that.
All right, and I guess that's it.
Now remember, your earnings, what you get, can go up. But once you retire or get a disability benefit, the only way that benefit is going up is if you work, you pay Social Security taxes on what you earned, then when they recalculate the benefit, it takes them about 18 months. You can always write in and ask for it by the end of the year. You don't have to wait 18 months before you get your increase. You can write Social Security and say, hey, here's my W-2, I made this much money, I want to replace lower years, please include this money in my calculation now. Because you don't want to wait a year and a half. You can do that. Okay, and so can disabled people, because they are allowed to work. They're allowed to work what's called the trial work period. If in 9 months they show that they can work, then their benefit will be terminated. Their Medicare continues for 2 years. Disabled people don't get Medicare until they've been in the program for 2 years. They get Medicare on the 25th month. So when their Social Security benefits are cut off, they get an additional 2 years to make up for the first 2 that they didn't get benefits for. Okay, but if they work, then obviously, yeah, their benefit will go up because the benefit will be recalculated to include recent earnings. And you had a question. Oh, okay, go ahead.
This is just about student loans. If you default on or you're not paying your student loans, will that follow you into your golden years?
There actually is there is a law that was passed. Now, it's not the Social Security Act that was amended, but if you owe student benefits either to the VA or to the whoever you borrowed the money from, there is a provision in the statute that those monies can be collected from your tax refund. And if you don't have any taxes that they can collect from, if you are drawing Social Security or veterans benefits, they will be offset. The money will be paid.
When our country became bankrupt,
When our country became bankrupt,
we didn't get our 3% cost of living raise for 3 years. Can we expect to get a bonus to make up for that? Because we're like 3 years behind.
okay, so the reason you did not get a cost of living increase is because the consumer price index did not go up by at least 3%. The only reason you got a pay raise last year is because your president ordered it. It's not because it was in the law. The law says you get a raise when your consumer price index goes up 3% or more. Okay.
There are people who are saying that the CPI is being controlled and inflation is not being accurately reported. I know the buying power is just not there.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the CPI because that's actually another item that's under consideration for change by Congress. Because Congress is the one that determines what is included in the CPI. You know, like the interest rates, the cost of a home, that kind of thing. The cost of your food, medicine, all that stuff. And Congress has been thinking that that the formula for the CPI is too magnanimous, that they're not considering what should really be considered. And so it's on the table and it's being considered to redo how that particular figure is derived. And I assure you it will not be to our benefit. Yeah.
I think it's called a chained CPI. There's a lot of
You mentioned that Texas poverty was like 10.7, and if we did not have the Social Security or benefits, it'd be like 40%. Is there a number for like nationally what it would be if there was no provision, Social Security?
You know, I was taking that from, Social Security has all kinds of figures in its website, by the way. There's an article that came out that shows the statistics for all the states. There are actually states that are worse than Texas, because this gave us all 50 states. Well,
let me guess, they're in the deep south?
I always think that Texas has the worst poverty rates, because come on, Texas is stingy. You know it. I know it.
We're Mississippi.
Well, thank you very much, because Mississippi, Mississippi, with Social Security benefits, they have a 12.5 poverty rate. Without Social Security, it would be 54.8. Yes. They're one of the worst. So they are just awful. Tennessee's not far behind, Tennessee is the same as Mississippi. They have a poverty rate of 11.5, and if they were to take away Social Security, it'd be 54.8. Louisiana's pretty bad. Louisiana's got a 15% poverty rate. Illinois, they're at 7.5 poverty rate. Without Social Security, it'd be 44.2. Yeah. Was that it? Oh, okay.
Oh, you got much?
Okay, I think she did. Was that done? Okay.
I got one more. You mentioned earlier that Congress is considering increasing the amount that people pay in down to 117,000 now. That's the maximum. You're going to increase the maximum. Is the pension, is the amount of Social Security determined by the maximum amount that's paid? In other words, if they increase the amount, would that screw it all up?
Well, obviously, if they increase the amount, I mean, what they're planning to do is uncap it, right? Because right now, there is a cap on how much you pay Social Security tax on. It's $117,000 this year. So they want to, if you make $2 million, then you pay Social Security tax on $2 million. Clearly, that means that those people will be earning a higher benefit.
Right.
Yes. As I said, the formula is a very complicated formula. It's we lovingly called it AMY, because it's called the average index earnings. Average indexed earnings. And it's complicated. And they're not going to change the part where the first bend point is to help poor people. But I promise you that they will probably change the latter part of the bend so that the super uber rich don't get that much money.
Yes, it is often said that the working poor couldn't survive without benefits. Do you think this is really not welfare for the poor, but welfare for the corporations? And if there were a living wage, then we wouldn't need to have all these supplemental benefits.
I am not going to open that can of worms.
Why not? Why not?
Well, no. We know corporate...
No. Well, as someone who's worked in the system and understands the cost and so on, I'd love to hear your comment, really, seriously.
Okay, off camera.
Now, I am not a financing expert. I do have my feelings, and I agree totally with you that there is corporate welfare. You look at Richardson. We live in Richardson. We gave State Farm millions of dollars in tax cuts so that they would build in Richardson. They are probably going to pay less taxes than my husband and I pay. But, on the other hand, where would we be without State Farm? That's going to add so many jobs to our economy. I mean, it's one of those what is it?
I must say, I just left State Farm for Allstate and got a huge reduction in the cost of my insurances.
Really?
Absolutely.
We were with State Farm for years.
Well, I was, and
General Electric made a profit of $60 billion in the United States in 2012, and they paid no taxes, and it was perfectly legal.
Mm-hmm. That's corporate welfare. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about as we retire at 62, what are we taxed at? I've been told that you'll be taxed at, if you make $1, you got to give Social Security or the government $1.
Okay, that's not a tax. Okay, that's not a tax. If you are beneath the retirement age and you're still working, then you can work. But if you earn more than a certain amount, which is also, by the way, chained to the Consumer Price Index. So, let's see. So, in 2014, if you are under 65, or in my case 66, and I'm about to drawing benefits, then anybody beneath their full retirement age, they can earn $40,080 a year. That's about $33.40 a month. In 2014, it went up to $41,400. Now, once you reach your full retirement age, you don't have to worry about that, because you can work and earn $1 million, and you can still collect all of your Social Security. Now, you're going to pay taxes on it, but you're going to collect it all. But for those that are not yet full retirement age, then the year that you become retirement eligible, then that year you can earn, for the few months before you retire, you can earn about $42,000. But the concept of 1 for every 2 that you're over. Okay, let's go for someone that's beneath retirement age. $41,400. That's how much you can earn. And it doesn't, oh, forgive me, I'm reading from the wrong table. $15,480. That's how much you can earn a year, because you're below full retirement age. So you can still work. So let's say that you work and you earn $30,000. Then you're going to take $30,000, subtract $15,480. And the difference, you're going to divide by 2. So that's how much Social Security, your Social Security benefit will be reduced by. Because you earn $30,000, you're not really retired. The benefit was meant for people who are really retired. But that's a good thing for people to do that, because the next year, or in 18 months, when the year is up, they will recalculate your benefit, and because they're using 35 years of earnings, they're going to go back and they're going to look, okay, is there a 0 year that we can substitute? And if they're substituting for a 0 year, 30,000 might raise your benefit by $10 a month, because they're replacing a 0 year. So it's all about what kind of year are they replacing. Now, my husband has a very small Social Security benefit. It's actually laughable, because he suffered the windfall elimination provision. He only gets, when he started, it was $104. $104, we used to laugh about it, because he suffered windfall elimination. They penalized him because he's a civil servant who had a pension based on his own earnings that didn't pay Social Security. And so he, as long as he was under 65, because his retirement was 65, then he could earn below 65 only whatever the maximum year was. But after he turns 65, as much as he wants. Anytime he works, if he earns $1,000, which sometimes he does, observing elections, they send him, in about 1.5 years, they send him a letter saying, oh, guess what, we've increased your benefit. I think he's all the way up to 140. Yeah.
Okay. With so many people saying that they're going to eliminate Social Security altogether, one thing I think I would like to know how you think about how to make sure and guarantee that Social Security will still be there 50 years from now. Would it help, for instance, if we had several million new citizens paying Social Security taxes? Would that benefit the Social Security program?
I'll tell you what benefits the Social Security program. All the illegal aliens that we love to complain about? Oh, excuse me, undocumented aliens. All of those wonderful undocumented aliens who steal Social Security numbers and use them to work. Guess what happens to the taxes? Because they pay Social Security tax. They don't collect it. That is a windfall that very few people speak about. Oh yeah, it's a huge windfall. But Can they get rid of it? First of all, it would take an act of Congress. It's a political process. It's not going to happen just because even the president can't say, I'm disbanding Social Security. He can't. There's a statute that prohibits him from doing that. So it's not happening. We're the voters. You think any of us would ever vote for somebody that wants to eliminate Social Security?
No way.
Well, I don't know. I just don't see it.
I have another question. When we were talking about reducing the cost of living for Social Security, wouldn't a better idea to save money, it would be not to double dip the, I'm using that word, that phrase loosely, but people who are getting retirement, why should they be getting Social Security in addition to retirement? The Social Security, as you stated, the program was created for people that couldn't live without it.
Well, it was never meant to be your sole retirement income. Thank you.
But it is for poor people.
It is for poor people. You're absolutely right.
Right. Because not everybody has a retirement fund.
So, not everybody has two pensions, okay? I believe it's less than 10% that have two pensions.
Exactly.
So the thing is, in all fairness, so you take somebody like me, I worked for 25 years under covered employment. And so why wouldn't I be able to draw Social Security? Are you saying that I shouldn't, even though I paid into it?
No, you shouldn't.
Well, I think Congress fixed, and it was reduced by 25%. That's what's called the windfall elimination provision. That is what that provision did, okay? Now, some people object to, okay, so you're retired, you're past your full retirement age, and now you're working and making $100,000 a year, and you're still paying taxes on that $100,000, and your Social Security benefit is going up. And there are people that say, well, no, his benefits shouldn't be increased because he's working more. Well, that makes no sense to me. If he's working and paying, he should get credit. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you give us an indication of how the growth in the Social Security Trust Fund compares with the growth in private pension assets?
I'm sorry, that's way out of my league. That's the, the people who do the numbers. Yeah. Okay. Is that it?
One more.
Oh, okay.
You indicated that the deep southern states are the states that have the most poverty, but in general, it appears that these people they would vote for, that they're the red states, and they vote for people that would eliminate possibly Social Security benefits. Are they cutting their throats and stabbing themselves in the back at the same time?
Again, that's a political process. I ain't messing with that one.
How do you stab yourself in the back?
They appear to be managing it, though.
That's what your friends are for.
Stab yourself in the throat, cut your neck.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So you get to respond to what the speaker said, for or against, whatever you want to say. Who wants to be first? There has to be a first.
You're first.
No, I'm not going to be first. I'll be last, but I'll be first. Anybody here? I can't believe this. Whatever. Right.
Well, I do think the people in the southern deep south are cutting their throats and stabbing themselves in the back at the same time. Quite why they do it is a mystery to me, but there you go. It must have something to do with their religious affiliations, perhaps the pulpit tells them so. Anyway, now the problem, I think, is that when you have a system that perpetuates unemployment, and in fact the working poor seem to be getting poorer and poorer, then in order to stop mayhem and violence breaking out, which it otherwise would, then you have to have some form of amelioration, which the Social Security is evident. Now, a much better policy really is to have better paying jobs, and so that you really don't need this system. Because I think really it is humiliating for people who have to go. I mean, I know people, in fact, what really concerns me is the fact that, yes, they're pushing up the retirement age to 70. My experience is people in corporations don't make it past about 50, 55. So what on earth are they going to do between 55 and 70? I mean, if they're going to rely on, this, it won't be there. And in fact, probably the health benefits won't be there. So I don't know what's going to happen to them, because this is what is happening. It certainly happened to my friends. I was removed from, well, actually I left Xerox when I was just about 50 and managed to hang in because of the dot-com boom and whatnot, but I don't see, with what's happening, this is going to get any better. So I think there's a real problem there. Now, I've advocated solutions, but I won't go into them today, but I believe that is a real problem for the future that's building up. So perhaps, as I've said, perhaps the solution is Obama should declare victory in the Middle East, leave it, cut down military spending, and then perhaps the savings in military spending could pay for the welfare benefits we know will be needed.
There's this right here.
Well, since we're going to enter the regime of wild speculation early, I would like to put before you a modification of the famous, notorious would be a better word, George W. Bush Social Security reform, which consisted of brokerage accounts and so on. But I believe there is a benign version of that which does not individualize the accounts, which is an enormously bad idea. But our collection of Social Security revenues comes in two parts and always has. An amount paid by the employee and a matching amount paid by the employer. That fraction of the employer class, which consists of publicly traded corporations, could be required to contribute to the system non-voting common stock, which would be held by the system. And the record of appreciation in that over the long haul has been vastly better, I believe, than the growth in the Social Security revenues, which come in the majority from lower paid, in fact, because the amount that's collected is limited. In fact, the companies that were publicly traded corporations would pay their share of the Social Security tax in stock, which could be held, not managed, not voted, but simply for appreciation. And the long-term behavior of the economy has suggested that that would be a tremendous asset in securing the future of the Social Security system and enabling a substantial growth in the amount of benefits that were delivered by it. Now, I haven't done the arithmetic, but that, I think, is an idea that avoids many of the features that plague such ideas.
Thank you. I have to do that every so often.
Well, I certainly appreciate the information the speaker has brought to us, even though I didn't get here for the first part of it. But this crowd knows that usually doesn't stop me from coming up and commenting. Let's look at worst case scenario. We have a lot of talk of privatizing Social Security. Those of us who do not trust government see that as a move to basically slip out of the responsibility and let the private market in an economic downturn basically fumble the ball, and then we don't have Social Security. So I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, you know, it's pretty iffy. I mean, there are people, I get on a lot of conference calls, and there are economic conference calls, and I listen to people speaking about basically kind of an economic tsunami that we are in right now. The water has gone out, everybody's playing on the beach, and they're all happy about the extra beach here, and yet we have this issue with derivatives. September 2nd, we had a major payment on derivatives. Somebody give me the right term for it. That's derivatives is actually kind of, you know, in quotes. There's mortgage-backed securities. That's basically what we're talking about. I think it was somewhere around 300 billion. But they've kicked that can down the road. They paid, I think, 10% of it and kicked that can down the road. But these payments don't stop. We've got these payments for the next 10 years. And people are telling me that we're going to look like Cyprus pretty soon here. And the government's going to be finding ways to get to monies that they have not touched thus far. Well, the Social Security issue, I have issues with it from several different aspects. From a kind of a philosophical aspect, Social Security is an affront because I cannot prefer not to. And you have the element of compelled performance that came in with FDR. Whether FDR personally was responsible for Social Security and its implementation, who knows? He was a great admirer of Stalin and Chairman Mao, and wrote just glowing letters about Stalin and Roosevelt, FDR. Yeah, check it out. So it's kind of an interesting thing, as we have a form of government here in this country which really we don't have anymore. We are functioning. The last president before this one said, "I am the decider," and this president said, "I have a pen." And a lot of things are coming out of the executive that we really have nothing to say about, and Congress certainly isn't saying anything. They're all just kind of stumbling around and acting like they know what they're doing, which I'm not really sure they do. They're acting like it for the voters. So I don't have a lot of confidence about Social Security. Also, from a religious standpoint, it represents another challenge. And that challenge is the state becoming God. In the previous to Social Security's implementation, people look to God. They look to their families. They look to their churches, their organizations, albeit imperfect, and man's hardness of heart towards man, of course, was a factor. Yet what I believe we have here with Social Security is not a perfect world relying on the state. If I were a corporate head and I had that much money coming in, I guarantee you I'd have that invested in the best international investments anywhere in the world. Compound interest would do a job, and very soon it would become a moot point. It wouldn't even be necessary to pay into Social Security because we'd have this country's benefits funded from here on out. Now what has happened is successive lootings, and it gets down to how much we trust government. Some of you here may be aware of the comprehensive annual financial report situation. Since the 1940s, governments down all the way to cities, counties, and all the way up to state level have been keeping a double set of books. And the public gets all the talk about budget, but then whenever the budget is met or whatever, any monies that were not spent kind of get moved off into all kinds of emergency accounts and get invested, and sometimes you can get them to be honest. We had one lady come in from Alaska, walked right down to Dallas County offices, got the Dallas City capper, the Dallas County capper. She came into a meeting within hours that evening, plopped him down and said, "What's wrong with you guys? You've been grumbling about this for a while. Here it is right here. Here's the money they've been hiding. Right there." All she did is she walked in, looked like a business person, said, "So-and-so, oh, he's out for the day? Well, I need the cappers."
What are cappers?
Comprehensive annual financial reports. So what I'm saying is we've been being pilfered by government at all levels. Before we were trusting in government to cover these things, that was not perfect either. We're in an imperfect situation here too. So that's what I have to say.
Okay. I really don't like hearing people say the government this and the government that, because the government is us. We are the people. We are the 99%. Yes, we are. The government is an individual. It may be a certain congressman or a certain governor or a certain president, but or it could be the police officer, or it could be the librarian. You know, government means a lot of different things. So I really don't like using that word so loosely. I'd rather people just go ahead and name the individual that they're referring to, instead of giving all of the innocent people the same blame and criticism as those who are guilty. Because they're not all guilty. I really don't believe that. I think we have some good people, and we have some bad people. But on the subject of corporations, we were talking about well, what I wanted to point out was the corporate welfare. People are always talking about all those poor people, those losers, those, you know, people in the bottom of the ladder kind of crap. But it's not those people that are sucking the blood out of the Social Security system. It's the dadgum corporations, the multi-million-dollar corporations. They, for the most part, don't pay anything in taxes. A lot of people like to point out General Electric, but there are many, many corporations that are doing the same thing on that level. So if they were to pay even the equal share of taxes that the middle class pays, we wouldn't have any problem with Social Security. We wouldn't have any. We would be able to send all of our young people to college for free, like they do in the Nordic countries and in the Middle East. I mean, if the Middle East can do it, why can't we? We can. We could, if the corporations were paying their fair share of taxes. It's that one change was made, we wouldn't have a huge debt. I mean, this president, this administration has paid off the couple of $1 trillion of debt that the Bush administration kicked up, even though Bill Clinton had left several $1 million. Was it million or billions? But a whole bunch of money. So he blew through all of that real quick. But what we need to do is end the corporate welfare thing. And how do we do that? Well, one thing we could do is rewrite the tax reform, tax system, and have just a straight tax for everybody. And corporations are not people. Oh, by the way, in case you hadn't heard, the Senate passed the 28th Amendment this week, Friday, to overturn Citizens United and McClellan. Now it will go to the House, and of course I don't expect the House is going to pass it, but it was passed today in the Senate, and nobody ever thought that would happen, but it did happen. So there's hope. And we the people do have a voice, as long as we choose to use that voice, doing simple things like showing up to vote. Let's not forget that Rick Perry was governor here for 2 terms, and the most votes he ever got was 12%. Yeah, 12%. And he's governor for 2 terms running because people don't show up to vote. Where are they? They're your neighbors, they're your co-workers, they're your friends and family, they're young people, they're old people, they're minorities, and it's up to us as concerned citizens, obviously, or else you wouldn't be here tonight, to talk to all of these people and have them show up and vote, regardless of what party you're voting for. You need to participate in the process. Otherwise, the privilege of doing so may be taken away from you. We're losing our schools, our public schools. You talk about taxes. George Bush, in the fine print of that No Child Left Behind, made it legal to steal public school money and give it to private businesses. Whoever thought that would happen? Our founding fathers must be rolling over in the graves. Okay? That is outlandish. That is crazy. And he forgot, or he was grossly negligent in not renewing the ban on assault weapons. And now everybody that has $700 can go out and buy their own personal assault weapon. To do what? You think they're hunting deer? I don't think so. And we're going to have to pay the consequences for that gross negligence in the near future, I'm sure. But if we had an extra 3 or 4 million citizens to pay Social Security taxes, then our Social Security system is guaranteed for life. And all we have to do there is reform the immigration system. And in order to do that, we're going to have a changing of the guard in the House. Okay, so come back next week and we'll talk about building a bigger house.
Okay, who's next? Come on up here. Al Holman.
Well, another stimulating presentation, and I appreciate what you've said. I was very happy to hear your description of how responsible the administration of the Social Security is, and that they operate in only about, what did you say, 5%? To me, that's phenomenal. It's hard to believe that it's happening here in America that way. As with most topics here, I agree with part of it and disagree with part of it. And the one thing that I see is that we still are sound asleep as far as controlling our government is concerned. Yes, we are the government, but if we're asleep, the corporate structure that has grown up around this private bank, the Federal Reserve System, just like Thomas Jefferson predicted, is taking over this country. And hence you have these people at the tops of these companies taking home 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, $100 billion bonuses while the workers barely make it through. And this is not right. We need to, I think, assess and We need to assess in our thinking all of the things that we think that tend to divide us from other people. Our religion, do we really believe, oh, if you don't believe the way that my church teaches, you go to hell? Well, there are a lot of churches that do believe that. You need to get rid of that. And we need to see ourselves in this nation as one country and one people. Now, in that regard, if we were able to do that and control our government like the Founding Fathers intended, then we could move into programs that benefit everybody, like they can do in Scandinavia. And John, last week your comments were absolutely correct in the sense of socialism in Scandinavia. But the difference is that they are a family as a nation far more than most on this earth. They were the Vikings. And the Vikings were interesting people. The women ruled the roost at home. Hence, they are far more balanced, male, female, in their approach to things. And here we worship the cowboys and other macho stuff and running off to war and so forth. Scandinavians are not going to do that. In Scandinavia, if a woman is making more money than a man, she has a better job and they have a child, it is not uncommon that the man will stay home and raise the children. And they're not thought of as any less of a man for doing that. I think it is in Norway, I've read, that they have a committee that every statute that is going to be enacted into law must first go through this committee. And the committee assesses that statute as a proposed law on the effect it will have on family life. And if it's negative, all of the Congress together couldn't pass it because it does not pass the scrutiny of that committee. They are family oriented, and hence socialism with them works. And in that regard, you're totally right. And it worked beautifully in Libya, as the Moriartys pointed out, until the banking system again, that wants total domination of this world, managed to get a war started that destroyed it. Now, I think if we could look at these countries that are far more cohesive and stable than this one, like the Scandinavian countries, like Switzerland, for instance. When I had my manufacturing company here, there was a young man who would come in and do sales work, and he was from Switzerland. And he told me one day that his father had just retired from the one company that he had worked his entire life in, and that the combination of the equivalent of Social Security there and the retirement benefits from that company meant that he retired for the rest of his life on the highest level of income he'd ever had. And that's the way they design it in Switzerland, because they care about their people. But we're so divided amongst things and so confrontational, and we are so sound asleep to allow our Congress to be bought off, which they are, and we are not in control because we don't choose to do it, that we have this corporate structure that rules this planet, basically through the United States. And we need to wake up and become as active as our founding fathers intended us to be. You know, in Iceland, when they had their financial collapse like the rest of the world, those people were smart enough to say, hey, bankers, this is your debt and your fault and not ours, and we're having none of it. So they had thousands of people line up all around their congressional buildings with pots and pans and spoons, and they beat these like mad for hours and hours and hours. And they drove their entire government out, and the people held new elections and elected a new government and started prosecuting all the bankers criminally. We need to do that here.
Are you next? No. I ran on next. Am I the last one standing? I guess I am. All right, come on up here.
Yes, I'd like to make a final comment. There is a misconception that if we privatize the Social Security system, that will be invested in corporate America. In fact, it will be invested in Wall Street. And none of that money goes to productive investment. It just goes into this gambling casino that is Wall Street. So the money is going round and round in this casino. And the Wall Street just spinning that roulette wheel faster and faster and making more and more money. This is a real problem, is that the money should be productively invested. It isn't. Now, the reason why profits go up is because the money supply, which, as Albert just said, is controlled by this private bank, keeps on increasing. And the money supply is comprised of two parts. One is the transaction part that we use every day, and the other one is the speculation part. And it's that part which keeps increasing and causes the corporate profits to increase. And so fundamentally, as I've said before, we should change the whole financial system so that we could invest in productive America. But we aren't. When we buy a stock, we are not investing in corporate America, just in this gambling casino.
Does this mean you're going to no? I thought you were going to be a speaker. All right. I guess I'm the last man standing. Is there no one else? All right. Well, sure. Come on up here. We'll let you make another comment.
Following up on what John just said, one example. Years ago, and I watched the lady who ran for president of Ukraine give this presentation. Years ago, she ran for president and she lost to the man who became the president, and I forget the names of them at that time. But this man allied himself with the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and so forth, and installed the equivalent of the Federal Reserve in Ukraine and a Wall Street in Ukraine. And within a very few years, all of the banking and speculative Wall Street type people became multimillionaires, and the average wage in Ukraine went down 40% across the boards. That's what this banking system that we are inflicted with worldwide is all about. And we really need to wake up, because all wars are bankers' wars, and they go to war to preserve their system, and they put people at war to install their system. And this is something we all need to put a lot of attention to.
I guess I'm the last man standing. All right. I want to thank our speaker for being here, and I think you did a terrific job. You brought a lot of questions out, and I think it was great. And I'm happy you were here. And well, what else can I say? You mentioned something to think about. I'm in a rural retirement, and for what it's worth, that industry, we used to have 5 people working for everyone that was on pension. Now we have 5 people on pension for everyone that's working. They downsized so much. We used to have 5 people on a train. Now we have 2, and that's going to go to 1. They're trying to do that now, and it's really bad. And it's automation, constant. So it's one of the things we're faced with in this country is this, and we have 25 million people out of work right now that are not paying anything, and they're not paying into Social Security, and that's the real problem we have. The Rural Retirement Fund was so bad off. They went to Rural Retirement and says we can't. It's unsustainable. We can't keep it going. So now the employer is now paying 2.5 times what the employee pays for retirement costs. I don't know if you're aware of that. That happened because of the downsizing. They're making a fortune, though. The corporation, they're very happy to pay it because they're making so much money. They get rid of so many people. But that can't go on, because if you don't have people paying into the fund, the whole thing is going to go up in smoke. We know that. That's what our Congress has to realize. So, looking ahead at things, maybe I'm off base here, but we need a shorter workday in our country to put people back to work. We can't do that, because we do that, the corporations leave town. They go overseas where labor costs are cheaper. We need to put tariffs on corporations, not on other countries, because you put a tariff on another country, you got a price war. That doesn't work. Put a tariff on a corporation, you don't have a problem. For example, Apple produces everything in China. They sell it all here. They don't produce anything here. So if you put a tariff on them, you said we're going to pay the difference in labor costs, the difference in environmental protections, then they'd say, well, we're not going to pay it. We don't have to pay it. If you reduce it here, you have jobs here. And once you got them putting jobs here, then you can think about shortening the workday. But none of this is going to happen if we don't change the Congress. We got the best Congress money can buy. That's the biggest problem we have. And I know that today that she mentioned the Senate came up with that. That's a good thing, but it's endemic. It's further than that. I ran for Congress 4 times. First time I took $100,000 of campaign contributions, mostly from unions, and that worked. And I took 38% of the vote against a Republican. But the second time I ran, they all went to Gephardt in Washington and said, "Where should we send the money?" He said, "Send to open races and send to incumbents. Don't send anything to any challengers." Challengers haven't got a dime since before the year 2000, nothing. That's why challengers can't win elections. I ran twice here in Texas, didn't get 10 cents. And I can't run anymore. You burn yourself up. You can't do it. So the point I'm getting at is we need to change, in order to change Congress. I was a negotiator. If you get a greedy proposal that cuts your throat, how do you beat it? You come up with a greedy proposal that won't cut your throat. Well, what will Congress, you got to get Congress to do it. What are they going to do? Well, maybe we get them to act in their own self-interest, to instruct the Federal Communications Commission to require the media to provide sufficient free airtime. The airways are free, by the way, for federal candidates in general elections. They're their views. If you did that, they get to keep their money, plus they get free airtime, and they have no record of having lost an election. They go for it. So that might pass. And if it could embarrass them into passing it. And if it did, then things would change. They finally ended up representing the district that they were elected from instead of representing their people that are buying their vote in Washington. That's what I think. If you did that, then you could put tariffs on corporations, then you could shorten the work day, you could put people back to work, and then they could pay taxes, they could pay into keep the system going. That's what I think. Anyway, you now have the mic to comment on all these different comments and close the meeting.
I'm going to only comment to the comments that have to do with Social Security. I consider myself an expert on Social Security, but not on the economy or politics. So one of you indicated that a better solution would be to have better paying jobs, because that would then, I assumed when you said that you were going to trust that if I get paid more, that I'm going to be wise enough to invest and put my money aside so that it's there when I retire. You know, the problem with that is that, at least what I see, what I saw in my family, what I see in me and my children, they live on what they earn. They don't put anything aside because they have young families and it takes all their money to support the family. So, and it doesn't seem to matter whether you're making $30 an hour or $15 an hour. During those years when the children are young, it takes up all your income. Charles was a grade 14, I was a grade 12, and I promise you it took both paychecks to support 4 children. So it just assumes, I mean, you're assuming that if I get paid more, I'm going to save more for retirement? Anyway, corporations contributing shares to a fund. Again, that assumes they're putting it in a fund. How is that going to get invested? Stock market? Again, it's going to be left to the whims of the stock market. We've seen what happens to the stock market in a downtime. So you don't like it that it's compulsory, it's against your religion, then don't draw the benefit. You'll still have to pay. We thank you, but don't draw it then. Leave it for the widows. Leave it for the children who have no parents. Another problem I have with this idea of putting it, let the corporation contribute shares, etc. My suspicion is that such a system would only provide a benefit for the wage earner. Forget about the widow, the surviving divorced wife, the dependent parent, the disabled child. Forget about them. That benefit is only going to be for that wage earner. So nobody takes care of the family the way Social Security takes care of the family. It's mandatory. Paying taxes is mandatory. It's the only thing we know for sure. Besides death, you're going to pay taxes. May as well pay taxes for a good cause so that our seniors don't starve to death, so they can at least have money to keep the lights on, keep the air conditioner on, get their prescriptions. God substituting, you know, the government is substituting for God. I don't know of anybody that thinks that because Social Security pays them a check that they don't look up to God. That's just not what this country's about. Okay, so I'm not even going to go there. As government welfare, you know, I've already agreed with you on that. You know, I actually retired as an investigator for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I did all of those discrimination investigations. Now, you want to talk about government welfare? I'll tell you about government welfare. Well, not government welfare, but corporate welfare. Corporations nowadays, they don't hire employees, they hire contractors, because then they don't have to pay Social Security tax. And if they hire a contractor, then they're not bound by the civil rights laws. So, yeah, there's a lot of corporate welfare, but this speech was about Social Security. And Social Security is a good system. I don't see anything improving on it. I just don't see companies contributing to a fund as a viable alternative. I don't see investing the Social Security funds in the stock market, because we know what happens to the stock market. And I don't see depending on people getting a higher wage to have a better retirement, because let's face it, most of us are just simply not that disciplined. With Social Security, at least you have a net. It's a safety net. You'll at least have enough to pay the bills, get your prescriptions, and eat.
Okay, we're going to retire to Starbucks down the street. Our guest speaker is more than welcome to come along. And we have to be out of here by 9 o'clock. They close this place. So just so you know, we carry on the conversation wherever you want to do. But you're welcome to come down there. We'll buy your coffee.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbec's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next College of Complex class.